Hello, guys, and welcome to Vegan Booty Talks. As usually, your host with you, Aurora Gunko. And I have a guest with me today. Meet Rey Ortega, a plant-based pioneer with plus 30 years in the industry. In 1995, her first vegan cookie brand hits 1 million in sales. In 1997, he founded Sunflower Baking Corporation, offering gluten-free, animal-free cookies and diverse services like co-packing, product development, and design. Welcome to the show, Rey. Hi, how are you
Thanks for having
today?
me. Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for showing up. I love cookies. It's all about cookies
I
in my
couldn't
life.
tell. I couldn't tell. You're in such
That's,
good
I
shape.
know.
I mean, my
Well, that where we put all
wow.
the cookies, right?
I could
In
use
the
some of your
proper
advice.
places.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, before we get started, because I have a lot of questions, get ready for you, but just to, I'm sure, to let our listeners know a little more about you.
Sure.
Before we get started with the questions, can you tell, please, where you're from and what do you do for living right now?
Well, I am all about cookies. That's what I do for a living for the most part. So that's a good thing. And I have been for 30 years. I'm in Sacramento, California, the United States. And of course, you're in the United States too, but you're in, oh, to be lucky, so lucky you're in Hawaii, of all places. I mean, you go from Ukraine to Hawaii. I mean, that's a pretty big leap, but it's an interesting leap that you decided to go to Ukraine or Hawaii. But I saw I looked at your history and your videos, and I was like, oh, why? That's so funny that she did that, because I think that's everybody's dream job, is to go to Hawaii and live there and thrive there. But for the most part, I am doing cookies. I've been doing cookies for about 30 years, believe it or not. I mean, it's a task that I didn't really care if it failed or succeeded. I was just glad because I was vegan. I turned vegan in 1994. So, and one of the reasons why I got into the cookie business is because I hadn't had a cookie at that time for 7 years, or hidden eggs. I don't know how long you've been vegan for, but in 1994, which I think you were probably born around there, there was really nothing like that. No vegan cookies. No, a lot of vegan was still kind of new. It's vegetarian. Everybody was vegetarian, but vegan was something kind of still new in the United States. I don't know about you. Ukraine,
Yeah,
I
so I'm not
can't
as
even
young as you think. I wasn't born in 1994, but you look great. I thought when you said you went vegan so early, like so, more like many years far
imagine.
away. So I was like, oh my God, he turned vegan when he was 3 or something. So you look great. Good for you, even though I have to say the same compliment, right? For anyone who only listen us and not watch this, I mean, I cannot tell you eat cookies every day. So first
I
of
do.
all, yeah,
It's sad.
that has to be sad. But then the same thing
I'm
is,
not
I know
sure.
how you feel. I went vegan completely 8 years ago, but I don't eat meat from I was 9 years old. So I know how hard it could be, especially I was living in Ukraine, right? So in
Right?
Ukraine, plant-based diet is like in that time it wasn't even possible. No one is knew what it was. So I
Right.
can only
Right.
imagine how was it for you because you did even before me. So let's get
Yeah.
into that first. Can you tell us what, first of all, push you to switch to the plant-based diet?
Well, it was a strictly health-oriented thing. It's funny, as I grew up, my culture, which is a Spanish Mexican culture, we grew up, unfortunately, killing animals in the backyard, basically, to survive and to live. I had my mother and father both had large families. And so it was a very usual and normal things I mean, even though as a child, I didn't like the killing of the animals, I think that nobody likes the killing of the animals part. Nobody does, but everyone is like, "Oh, I love my steak and my lamb and my cheese and the torture." The torture of the animals is people. They always turn a blind eye to that. And for myself, it was strictly health. I was a very young child when I started to kind of be inspired to stop eating eggs when I was 16. So and then what inspired me to do so was reading medical books about the digestive system, endocrine system, because I started to not feel well as a child. And I went to the doctors over and over and over, and none of them seemed to be able to help me. So for some strange reason, as a child, I decided I'm going to start reading the medical books myself. Thinking I had the gall to think that I could cure myself because no doctors were doing it. So I decided, you know, at 16, I said, I'm not going to eat any eggs anymore. And then I realized, gosh, eggs is in everything. I mean, it's in all my favorite stuff, in particularly cookies. So I
Yeah.
stopped eating hidden eggs, the cakes and muffins and croissants. All my favorite foods had eggs in it. But it was like a death in my mind. A funeral I had to have for to put that to rest. I had to like realize, okay, I'm not going to eat any eggs anymore or hidden eggs. So, and then that was my first inspiration when I was 16. And then when I
So
came
did
to
you
about 24,
started to make cookies when you were
yeah.
16? Have you
Oh, I was
tried?
making cookies. No, I was making cookies younger than that, but
Wow.
I stopped eating the cookies when I was 16, and I
Mm-hmm.
stopped eating all things with eggs in it at 16. And then when I became 22, I got a job at a co-op. And then one of the first thing I found without eggs was a cookie, a chocolate chip cookie. And I was like, oh my gosh, God has answered my prayers, what little it might seem to be. Because, I mean, to give up cookies, I mean, I don't know about you, but I love sugar, unfortunately. And I really just I got sucked in because I don't know if you know about those tubes that you can buy, the cookies, you could chop them up, of Pillsbury tube cookies. Have you ever seen those? You can bake yourself. Have you ever seen those?
No, I never seen those.
They're big in the United States. If you go into the grocery aisle, they have a Pillsbury dough where you can just cut it up and bake it yourself. So that was a big thing for me growing up. So when I
Mm.
finally hit 22 and I became vegan, and then I went to the store and I found these chocolate chip cookies that were no eggs in them, and I couldn't believe it. I remember buying them all. I was like, I'm buying all of them. And I remember going back a couple days later, buying more, and I kept buying them. Then I realized, you know what, I need to just make these myself. They were at the time they were expensive, 1994. They're oh my gosh, it started adding up. I just figured out I needed to figure out how to make them myself. So
Mm-hmm.
I got a job at that co-op where they were making them. But the problem was they only lasted like a week. They were hard and they got hard. You know how baked goods can get stiff and hard and dry? Well, that's
Yeah,
what's happening.
it's
So
really great baking, yeah,
yeah, so
without the preservatives, yeah.
yeah, with all any of that stuff, to keep them soft, which I'm a soft cookie guy. I don't know, there's hard cookie people and there's soft cookie people I've discovered. So one
Mm-hmm.
of the first things I did is I got the job, I started to learn about it, and then I started to realize, I need to do this on my own. So I started my first company, which is alternative baking company, and I extended the
Yes, I
shelf life
have to
months.
interrupt you. I have to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but I really
Sure.
want to know, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners too, how did you do that? And did you start at an age of 22, you said?
Yes, when I was 22, and the funny thing is, I'd stopped working, I'd not really had a job, and I figured, I need to do something with my life, and I was so mad about the industry fooling us about milk and cheese and how good it was for you, and so I
Mm-hmm.
said, you know what, I was so mad that I said, I don't care if I failed or succeeded when I started the cookie company. I just wanted people to try these cookies as well. I thought everyone should have one of these cookies, everyone in the world, in my mind. So I started with less than $5,000. I got
Wow.
labels made, I bought some ingredients, and then little did I know, I thought even though I was alone, and I think that when you become vegan, and I've discussed this before, you lose a lot of friends. You lose people they don't want to hear that you can't eat cheese anymore, you can't eat meat anymore. So you
Mm-hmm.
become kind of alone, sort of. So I decided, well, that was worth it to me because I really just wanted a cookie. I really just
Yeah.
wanted to. I thought to myself, I don't care what happens. I need to start this cookie company. And so that's how I started. I basically became vegan in 1994 and about April. And I figured this was going to be something that it was going to be my new journey. I was going to
Uh-huh.
become a new person as a vegan.
Wow. And like you started with such a small budget. I just wanted
Yeah.
to mention that for some people out there who I believe are struggling and they probably hate their job, but they are scared to actually make that switch, right? And then they maybe thinks that they didn't have enough of budget, they didn't have enough of knowledge, they didn't have a support, they didn't have a team. So you overcome all of that in age of 22. How did you
Yeah.
do that? What was your support or inspiration? It's not easy.
Well, I went in this not even caring if I was going to fail or succeed. I didn't care because, and I think that what pushed me was when I became vegan, I was so glad to just be healthy. I was so glad to be alive and feel alive. It had been the first time I started feeling alive and my brain started working more efficiently. My sight started becoming more clear. And I figured, you know what? I thought to myself, I need to do something with my life. And it didn't matter whether I failed or succeeded. I just felt like everyone needed to try this and see what happened. I had to see what was going to happen. And I thought to myself, cookies, a lot of people make a living off of cookies. There's a big corporations and stuff. And so when I first started, I started really slow. It was 300 cookies a week. Then it
How
was,
did you sell them? How did you actually
oh
sell them
yeah.
when you
Well, interestingly, what's funny is every time I talk about cookies, my mouth still waters. Maybe I shouldn't have these cookies in the background behind me because every time I talk about cookies, I still love cookies. I'm sorry. Um, what was the question? I completely forgot what was the
So
question.
how did you actually start selling them? Well,
Oh,
you
I started
passionate.
selling. So I got when I got the job, I was working at night, a night shift from 9 to 3 in the morning. So I would bake them a few batches there. I bought the ingredients on the same distribution channel that the store was using. I would bake them, I would make them, I would hand wrap them, and then I had to get a little label made. And then I decided, okay, how am I going to do this? Who am I going to sell to? I couldn't sell to the same store that I'm working at, so I had to quit. So I quit the job. Then I started selling at gas stations and other natural food stores nearby. And I was so surprised in that time that people were buying. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And my cookies were huge. They were 5 ounces. They were huge at the time. And I was like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, this is amazing. So I was knocking on door. I was just out there. I didn't care. I was beating down doors, selling to anybody who'll take me. I was selling to gas stations, stores. And then I started to understand more about mail order. You know how mail order wasn't it what like it is today. In fact, a lot of the natural foods products that we see today are not as they are today. I mean, I didn't couldn't eat anything. In fact, when I became vegan, the interesting thing is I lost 95 pounds in total. So I became
Wow.
vegetarian. I lost 60 pounds when I became vegetarian. And then I realized without even exercising, and I was almost 300 pounds, I was 295 pounds. So I looked very different. And then I became vegan and then I lost another 35 pounds. But then when I started the cookie company, I gained about 25, 30 pounds because what once
Well,
I
I
started,
guess if you're really passionate what you do, you have to taste, right?
it's a it's a hard job, but somebody's got to do it. Okay, so
Yeah, yeah, I
it
understand.
was very
Well,
it was
how
very
you
difficult.
actually, is this is how you actually make your first million just by selling your cookies like this to
Yeah,
the gas station and stuff? Or
yeah,
what was the
yeah.
strategy? Like how you actually get so popular? And
Well,
the other question is, I remember you mentioned that the other cookies that you got from the store, they
yeah,
couldn't, stand for a while. They were
right.
coming too hard. How you do with that problem?
Well, it's interesting. First, I basically had really no sales experience. I had no baking experience either. So I'm very much self-taught. So what I had my first problem was getting the cookies, like you said, to last longer. And I didn't without any preservatives because I was like, I'm not putting preservatives in. I don't want that. I want them to be completely natural, right? So I had to learn the moisture content, and there's a sugar that I use that is it's actually hygroscopic, not hydroscopic, but hygroscopic. And hygroscopic means that when it's put out in the air, it attracts moisture. And because that's the problem with a lot of baked goods. A lot of baked goods, they tend to get dry fast. And that was happening with all the stuff that I was making. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to solve this problem. So I had to take out the moisture and find the balance. There was a balance. There's a perfect balance. There's a sweet spot that I found. It took me a long time. And that's why I gained weight because I had to try all these cookies. In fact, I always tell people, I'm probably the one person that that has eaten the most cookies in the world. I used to eat about 800 cookies a year. 800 cookies a
Wow.
year. Then I started calculating, oh my gosh, all this wheat, So wheat, there was no real gluten-free in 1994, but I was eating them like crazy. So it was a lot of trial and error. And then just knocking on doors, just delivering them myself. And then I had to start, once I did the Sacramento town area, then I had to get on the phone, start calling people. Then I ended up getting a partner that I didn't actually end up working well with because they weren't vegan. And I was really staunch vegan. I was very like, I don't want to really be around people who are eating fish and meat still. So I left the company in 1997 to start Sunflower Baking Company. And I really just repeated the process. Then I would have to get on the phone, start over again. I started over again, and within the first 3 years, we were doing about $1 million in sales, my first company. And that's what inspired
Wow.
me. Yeah, that's what I didn't even know until the third year, until I left, that we were doing that much in sales. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I didn't realize so many people wanted cookies. I had no idea.
I can tell you as a nutritionist, that's totally true. Yes, people can eat cookies all day ever and forever. But let me ask you now for nowadays, like today, your cookies are gluten-free
Yeah.
and vegan. And basically, from the nutrition perspective, is one of the best nutrition profile cookies I can find. What type of flour do you use and how you get it to be gluten-free?
Well, I'll tell you the interesting story about that is, so the gluten-free thing started really coming around maybe 15 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
I haven't really kept track. But then I realized, I think the thing that pushed me to do that was, it was kind of accidental gluten-free is what I like to call it. Because then I realized when I started to do the calculation on how many cookies I was eating and how it was still affecting me. And so when you consume something and a large amounts, it will affect you. I mean, if you eat a lot of sugar, it'll affect you. If you eat a lot of wheat, it'll affect you, and all the ingredients inside. And I was eating a lot of cookies. So I probably eating 3 or 4 a day. Okay. So 3 or 4 big cookies a day. So you have to keep that in mind.
Mhm.
So I don't think I took a day off from cookies. I still haven't taken a day off from cookies. Sometimes when I fast, I do, but I've been fasting a
Okay.
lot lately. But then I realized, you know what? I need to have them in higher in fiber and protein. So I started
Yeah.
making them with pinto bean flour and rice flour as a complete protein. So when I started
Mhm.
to understand more about the nutrition end of cookie or flours and products and things that we consume, I needed to look harder at the nutrition facts. The nutrition facts were like the thing that I was constantly putting into my body. And it was important to me. I was like, okay, I've got to make sure that, my bathroom habits have got to be better. I think then that's very telling on your health. I mean, your bathroom habits are really telling. And I tell this to everybody. You have to look at what you're eating and how it's all coming out, because it's really the way that I found my own health. I found my own health by understanding the chemistry of the digestive system and what it tolerates. I think that for yourself, as good a shape as you're in, you could probably tolerate more things more than I could. I just think it's just a body type chemistry. Even though we're all 98.9% identical, we all digest food differently. So when I
Yeah,
started to understand that, yeah, when I started to understand that, I started pinto bean and rice flour. And then because at the time, as much as I wanted to try oat flour, the oat flour gluten-free was not available. And so
Mhm.
that was one of the first things I discovered. I thought, because I started merging into uh, like the gluten-free industry. So when the gluten-free industry started coming in, I found out that that oat flour had some traces of gluten. And the reason why, and people don't know this, but what happens is it's because oats are grown in the same field as wheat. And that was the reason why it wasn't gluten-free entirely. So I had to wait a long time. I had to wait, maybe 10 years before that started happening, before people started realizing the gluten-free trend was coming in. So now I switched to oat flour, which I love. I love oats, first of all. I love, even though they're high in carbs, they are higher in protein and fiber, and they are delicious. I love oats all around. I mean, it's just one of my go-to things. But now putting them in cookies is one of my favorite things. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, when I became vegan, I was only eating oats, top ramen, soup, and bread and toast. That's all I was eating. So for me, oats are a go-to thing.
Yeah, well, I would have to say that gluten-free is not only just the brand, it's actually like, almost 80% of Americans are gluten-free, I mean, gluten intolerant, as well as the dairy intolerance, right? So people don't really
Yeah,
know that. They just eat something, they feel bloated, they feel constipated
right.
and constipation or stuff like that. And then they maybe just wonder what's going on. And
Right.
probably if you just try to take gluten out and dairy, you will feel so much better, right? And you
Oh,
observe the way we have all the different microbiomes, which means our, whatever we eat are digested in a different way. But at the same time, there's just some specific things that are can trigger, your stomach to react specific way that wouldn't feel so much comfortable. So I agree with you, gluten-free and dairy-free is the best. So I would recommend to anyone try the cookies like that, not just because they want to go vegan or they are vegan, also because this is the best for your gut to actually digest them. Because cookie as the bread is hard digestible food, right? I can only imagine if you eat so many in a day, you probably feel full. And the if you would eat not vegan cookies with a lot of gluten like this, I know you're gonna feel like a crap. So good for you that you still eat them and they are gluten-free and vegan. So if anyone want to try your cookies, how they can get them right now?
well, you can go to the best thing to go to my website. I just made a new website for several reasons, and that is even though it's sunflowerbaking.com, I should have that. Like you have yours. I like how yours is. Yours is really cool. But I
People who are listening to us, he means the background.
yeah, the backgrounds. Yours is
Uh-huh.
cool. So mine
Okay.
is startaveganbusiness.com. I just recently put that up because I want people to be inspired to do more and do better, make more vegan products, whatever they think they love. They need so worth the investment. The investment not just of the animals and the planet, but your health too. So I'm very focused on making stuff that is better for you. My cookies have evolved over the years. And it's because of the passion that I have that's tied together with it that's made me feel better. And I think I had to use that as a kind of a primer of what I was going to do next. And I'm always working on stuff. I work on stuff all the time. And I'm very conscious about what I put into my body, let alone what I put into my cookies, and it's just a very important factor. And I do
Yeah.
wish, I'm still picking and choosing. There's still things out there that I think that it can be improved. Like I want to do better with my oils. I use a nutrient dense sugar, unrefined sugar sweeteners. I use those. I use grape juice concentrate and brown rice syrup sometimes, in some cases. Most of them I do, but I do have two lines. I have the Mishi's line and I have the sunflower line. But both you can go to my website, startaveganbusiness.com, and you'll see you
I
can
love
see
the name.
my
I love the new name. I think it's a great to change the name like that because you are a source of inspiration for anyone out there who are looking to achieve their dream and do something they love and make a business from it. So I think
yeah.
you can be a really great, coach for someone like that. And I would suggest as a nutritionist that I can see really, really soon non-sugar cookies in your website, like let's say with stevia or monk fruit, right, that you can use play with that. I do cook cookies. I have a couple of recipes, super simple. And I do use stevia or monk fruit, and they came out really well without any sugar because a lot of people, as the gluten intolerance, they have some of them like have diabetes or stuff like that, right? So we wanted to
Right.
have that option as well. That would be really cool.
I'm working on some monk fruit. In fact, I was just working on some monk fruit, and I'll tell you that monk fruit stuff is powerful. I don't know. You don't need very much of it, but that stuff is really
Yeah,
strong.
just
I was like,
it.
gosh, yeah, it's really strong. So it's an acquired taste for me because I'm spoiled. And you have to keep in mind when you transition into any kind of diet, and goes for everybody, you have to be more accepting and understanding that things are not going to taste always the same. Things are not going to be perfect in that realm. Like I always tell people, when you go to a different restaurant or a Mexican restaurant, the salsa is going to be different. Well, when you try something new, it's going to be different. You can never compare the cheeses of a dairy cheese versus the newer cheeses. You can't. You shouldn't. And that's our spoiled tastes. We
Hmm.
are as humans, no matter where you are on the planet, what we're used to growing up is not going to always be the same if you evolve. And if you don't evolve, you're going to die. You might die with happy cheese in your mouth, but you're gonna die sooner and more miserable and less quality of life if you do not do something with your diet sooner than later.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's such a good point, but I have to add to that, you're right. We cannot compare foods, but what we can compare is how we feel after we eat something,
Oh,
right? So that's a huge, I always
yes,
point that into my clients as a
yeah,
nutritionist. Maybe that cookie is not going to taste like your old kids, remembering of the cookies from your grandmother with a lot of sugar, gluten, and eggs. But
refined sugar.
after the cookie, right, which is taste maybe exactly like that, maybe just maybe not exactly like that, but also great, you will feel good and will feel good forever, right? You will live longer, you will have more energy. So that's what we can compare. So if you eat something, see how you feel. If you feel great,
Yeah,
that's a great product for you. And I know your cookies are great, so I'm happy to recommend them. And I just wanted to see you succeed and have more versions of the cookies and flavors. I feel like I can talk to you forever, but we have some timeline. So we
sure.
have to finish up before I let you go. If anything you want to share, or maybe any suggestions to anyone out there who are wanted to switch to the plant-based diet or
Yeah.
already vegan, and just looking to, influence other people.
Well, I think that you have to take it, like you said, you have to, it's trial and error. You have to try things, see how you feel, but you have to give it a couple of days. You have to give it some time. And you'll realize once you start to get the things that jive with you and the way you feel, and you're happy with the taste. And one of the things that I did was eat something that is vegan that you love before making a bad decision on, hey, I'm going to put cheese on it. Don't put cheese on it. Try it without cheese. Get full, because I think part of people's mistakes are they need to get full faster. And that's interesting. I'm very proud of you, the fact that you are a nutritionist vegan. You don't know how rare you are as a person who understands this thing. I get it all the time. I hear about it all the time. So you should be very proud of yourself, not only for speaking 2 languages, because wow, that's amazing, but you're here, you understand, you're vegan. You are an amazing person, and I hope everyone listens to you. Everyone needs to listen to you, whoever you talk to. I can tell you, because you
You're
are
so fun.
smart.
You're
Look how
so
good you
fun.
look. You walk the walk, you talk the talk. You're an amazing person. But I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. You're welcome.
Well, I feel the same about you. I think you have an amazing product and you're so passionate about what you're doing. So as I said, a great source of inspiration for me and for all of our listeners. If anyone
Yes.
want to follow your journey, not just order the cookies, but maybe just follow you
Yeah.
to see how you succeed, how they can find you, if there's an Instagram or Facebook
I'm on
page that you
all my
can
stuff.
share.
Yeah, all my stuff is on the startofveganbusiness.com. You can find everything there, and past interviews and stuff like that. But I'm going to be sending
Right.
you cookies here too. Keep in mind, I wish I had sent them to
Of
you earlier.
course.
So that's
No worries. All
I'm
good.
glad you asked. I was afraid you weren't going to want them, but I'm glad you did.
No, I do. I do. I will share my experience with you guys, and
Great.
all the description down below. I will share your website and how people can order your cookies. I wish you have an amazing rest of your day, and I hope to hear you soon in my podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye.